So James, I'll come to yourself next. So the next topic I wanted to cover, and this always generates lots of debate in my experience, and is really one of the the differentiators in creating a really good or successful program, and that's around the ability to capture key metrics and measure the ROI of your MDF program. So from your role, it'd be great to get some of your experience on how this is done, the kinds of things you have to do to achieve it, and ultimately it would help justify the program. So yeah, James, over to you, please.
Yeah, it's a good question, Kenneth, and I think you could probably run a session specifically on this point. Measuring the success of an MDF program and understanding what ROI you are getting from it is something that I think probably all vendors struggle with to some extent. Everybody has got areas of their program they're looking to try and make improvements on, and some are struggling considerably. I mean, we work with a lot of customers that have got this very pain point, but sometimes for different reasons. So I guess the way you tackle it would be a little bit different depending on whether you've got a very mature MDF program, where you're obviously going to need to do a bit of an audit and a review of what's working, how it's working, what's working well, maybe what isn't. To somebody who is maybe starting an MDF program from scratch for the very first time, it's a lot easier to then maybe sort of build the right sort of metrics and behaviours in by design. I think there's probably two ways I'd like to answer this question, I think. And one is obviously looking at how you can measure ROI and what are the things you can do to enable that. Then I think the other thing is looking at how you can actually improve on the ROI of an MDF program, which is ultimately what everybody wants to see. So firstly, I think it makes sense to build ROI in as standard. When you're doing your planning, Michelle was obviously talking about looking at your budgets. You're going to then start to look at what kind of activities you actually offer to your partners. And there's an awful lot that vendors tend to provide in terms of demand gen activities, but also MDF can be used for things like NFR kit for doing demos or funded heads. Fundamentally, I think all of that stuff is being done to generate new business or to increase the footprint you've got within existing accounts. It's all there to generate business. So I think look at what your activities are, and when you're doing that planning, think about what the metrics of success would be aligned with those activities, and don't just think about the traditional ones. Your lead gen, telemarketing activity, which I know is what people have done for years and years, and it feels easy to measure that. But think about digital activity and what success metrics you want to be getting out of those. Even something like demo kits, that's still purchased by partners, or the MDF is used to purchase that kit to run demos. You're still able to measure that. So I think start off by looking at the activity types, build in your sort of metrics against those, and make sure you communicate that to your partner community so they understand what it is, what good looks like, what the success metrics are, and how they do the benchmarking. And I think you also need to make it as easy as possible for the partners. Systems, obviously, Kenneth, you guys at Channel Mechanics are very much in this business, but I think systems play a big part in this as well. If you want to measure ROI, you need to have the systems in place that will allow you to do that. And I think something that I've certainly seen on a couple of consultancy projects of late is that a lot of vendors have at least two systems in play here. You've got your MDF platform, but you're also then using a CRM system, let's say a Salesforce, for example. And if you want to track your ROI from opportunities cradle through to the grave, I think it makes sense to look at how you integrate your systems, your key systems, and you make it as easy and simple as possible through things like automation, the workflows, so that as partners complete their campaign, they do their proof of performance and proof of execution, and that gets loaded into your system, that there is a nice flow that takes it through into your CRM system where you are tracking that opportunity through that buyer's journey. So I think systems play a really big part in this as well. And I think there's some other elements to kind of consider here. And a lot of that is based around the way your program is designed in terms of actually engaging your partners you want the partners to really buy into what you're doing. I think that really has some payoff in terms of how much skin in the game they're putting behind it. So I think what we've certainly seen in some successful partner programs has been where vendors have put in place things like an MDF partner council. Lots of vendors have partner councils, but it tends to focus on things like the technical community. But I think you can build something around that MDF audience, the marketeers in your partner's business, get them involved in providing feedback, sharing ideas, and using that as an opportunity to identify and model good behavior and share those successes with wider internal program teams to refine and improve the sorts of activities you run, but also share that with your partner community. If you're identifying things that are working really well, don't keep that secret, share that with them. I think a couple of other things make sense to plan early with your partners and also plan for the long term. Something we've seen as a bit of a challenge when we work with a lot of the partner community is that everything tends to focus on quarterly silos. Maybe think in terms of planning for a 12-month period. A lot of the sales, they are long-term sales. That sales process can be quite complex. So think about how you can support your partners through that journey. Don't just focus on lead generation, but also we're starting to see some vendors and disties for that matter looking at things like lead nurture as a service as well. So it's not just about helping them generate those opportunities, but it's about progressing them. And that's ultimately what's important when you're looking to track ROI through closed business. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to it. I think it's a combination of platforms and systems. It's about people that support that. Make sure your partners are at the core of it, and it is about some of the programs that you may offer, both in terms of lead generation, but also lead nurture as well.
Very good. No, it's really comprehensive, James, and a ton of good stuff. As you said, we could spend a whole session on this particular piece, and I always say, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it, and you have to, and it does require a lot of upfront thinking. So, as you said, leave plenty of time to run into these programs, plan them out well. For the activities you're going to run, make sure that you understand how those activities can be measured. And again, as James said, putting the systems in place is really important, and it's not as hard as people think. It used to be many years ago, but there's so many great solutions out there now to manage and measure this stuff. It's well worth people's while having to think about that, because once you start to run successful MDF programs, they really do make a difference. They really help your partners. And I love the idea about, that cross-pollination, James, of, learn from your partners, get those ideas and feed them to other partners. So you create that kind of success across your community. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to push on a little bit. I think, Brenda, maybe we had another quick poll to run, and then I want to move into how to deal with, regional differences on different activity types.
Okay, thanks, Kenneth. Yeah, this is a very quick one, simple yes or no answer. So here we're asking, does your MDF program offer third-party marketing activities? So either yes, no, and of course, if you don't offer MDF to partners. Okay, so results of this are pretty together. Okay, I think almost everybody has voted now, so I'm going to close that off and pass it back to you, Kenneth.